It all started when one day a girl finds out that a cruel ruler is going to find himself a wife. She does everything possible to get him to notice her, but not in order to live happily ever after with him. She wanted to get closer to him, to gain his trust and make sure that thousands of people were saved. Whom he mocked day after day, she succeeded. She married him, took his life, and thus received the recognition of the whole people. Huabanya was so cruel that he indiscriminately destroyed everyone in his path. He enjoyed watching parents cry over their dead children, or how someone found out that their friend or loved one had died, whom they had seen just recently. He didn't need a reason for this. And in order to stop all this, the girl decided to take this step, took a risk, and everything worked out for her. She really didn't want to do it, but she simply had no choice. She still believes that no one has the right to dispose of someone else's life simply because they have such an opportunity. Meanwhile, the day of mourning has come. Today is exactly 3 years since his death, and exactly 3 years since people have been freed from his abuse thanks to her. It would seem that this day should feel like a victory for her, but she cries because to this day she cannot forgive herself for taking a person's life. The girl prays every day for him to be well in heaven because she is afraid that for this she might be punished, and after her death she will go to hell. Even though she gave a gift to a huge number of people, her life doesn't seem to have become any easier. She can't even look at her hands because she remembers how she destroyed her husband with those same hands. Sometimes she even wonders how right this decision was, and only sometimes she realizes that if this person were still alive, it would be much worse, including for herself. The lady often sees him in her dreams, meets people similar to him, and every time this happens, she hates herself. There is only one way she can calm herself down. She puts a lot of candles for him and prays that the Almighty forgives her for this terrible act. She even says out loud that if she had the opportunity to turn back time, she would rather suffer from her husband than blame herself for the rest of her life for the fact that she is far from being a saint. She has this ritual every day at the same time. This day should not be any different from the previous one. But someone is already coming towards her, at the sight of whom, at the very least, she will lose consciousness or think that this is some kind of dream. She stands calmly in the middle of the room, not suspecting anything, and behind her is a man who could not possibly have appeared here. He slightly opened the door. She heard it, turned around, then looked closely to see who it could be, because there was little light in the room. And when she realized who it was, she froze in one place and seemed to have lost the gift of speech, and there could be no other reaction. The guy asks who she is praying for here and why she is so sad, as if he himself does not know the answer to this question. The girl at this moment simply does not believe her eyes. She just clearly heard a voice that she thought she would never hear again. He literally stands in front of her, smiles, and asks what she is doing here. Although this never happened even in a dream. This is her dead husband for whom she had just prayed, and for whose death she blames herself every second of her life. Bakri is completely perplexed. She feels that this is definitely not a ghost, but a real person. Her mind says that this cannot be, but her heart tells her, here he is, alive. She is simultaneously incredibly happy to see him, but at the same time, she is just as incredibly afraid that he has come to take revenge on her. Although the question remains as to how this is even possible. He just came closer to her. She immediately felt the smell of incense and earth, as if he had just crawled out of there. He expects some answers from her, and she doesn't even know how to behave and how to react, because it's more like hallucinations than like everything is as she sees it. She tries to think of some options for how this could have happened, but she has no ideas. She just doesn't have any. She hears his voice and smell from him so clearly that a little more, and she will simply go crazy. When suddenly her husband asked who died, that she wears such mourning clothes and prays to him. If only he knew how she felt right now. He would just keep quiet and not say anything. It would be so much easier. In the end, Bakri can't take it anymore, although you can't tell from the outside. But inside, she was very scared, so much so that she started to fall over and completely lost consciousness. He immediately started to catch her because she would hit her head hard and would definitely not come to her senses anytime soon. I wonder with what intention he returned to her and whether he will use the opportunity to take revenge for what she did to him, or it turns out wanted to do. It feels like she can feel his crazy energy even without consciousness, which seems to have only intensified over the years. Evening came. He even took care of her, put her on the bed so that she could lie in comfort. But perhaps this doesn't mean anything yet. The most interesting thing will start after she wakes up. And in the meantime, Hwa saw that she moved and asked if she heard him or not. She whispered something. He didn't really understand anything, but for some reason he smiled as if nothing had happened between them, and he was sincerely glad that everything was okay with her. Then he asked her to stop pretending and open her eyes because he knew she was not sleeping. The girl immediately stood up after these words. She did not make him angry, although from his appearance it was impossible to say that he felt even a drop of discontent towards her. Her husband even prepared tea for her in advance, so that as soon as she woke up, she would immediately drink a warm drink, and so that she would feel better. Bakari thinks that he has never been so attentive. She has never even seen him smile in her life. And then this. Meanwhile, he tells her that she fell while they were talking and acts as if nothing happened. The girl realized that he could pretend like this as much as he wanted, so she asked him directly why he was alive and how this happened. He replied, how can she say such things about him, as if he had not died and had lived somewhere nearby all these years? Then he asked if everyone really thought he was dead, and she replied that yes, actually, and as his wife, she would like to know what was going on here. It's strange, but he was the first to ask her to explain what was going on. Well, since he asked, she started with that everyone said goodbye to him 3 years ago, and she thought it was very important to note that she regretted her actions every day and was very glad that everything turned out this way, that she could apologize for it, if of course he didn't mind. She tells him that today is the last day of mourning, and that it is very strange that he showed up today. She thought he would say something about it, but the guy didn't even look her in the eye and said it was just funny. She expected to hear anything from him, but not that he didn't remember anything like that happening to him. The more he talks, the less she understands him, and this only makes her more nervous and afraid of what will happen next. Because even if what he says about not dying is true, her words about her being able to destroy him could ruin their relationship. I wonder how he will explain the fact that he is wearing such dirty clothes, as if he really crawled out of the ground. And they are also very similar to the ones he was wearing when he died. Whatever he says, she's sure he must remember something. Because if he remembers that she's his wife, he must remember what happened the last time they saw each other. That's for sure. Suddenly, for some reason, he started remembering those moments when they spent the night together and how helplessly her body moved with each of his movements, as if hinting that he would like it. I could redo. Her whole face immediately turned red from this. The girl remembers very well that evening when she begged him to stop, and he continued as if he was trying to test how long she could last. Suddenly he says that this was the last memory he has, and this is at least some kind of clue, and now she believes him at least a little. The more they talk, the more it seems to her that this is some kind of too realistic dream. And the guy talks about that evening in such detail that it may actually be the last thing he has left in his memory. The only question is, if he didn't die, then what was he doing all this time? And why doesn't he remember what happened literally a year ago or yesterday? She has a lot of questions for him, but he answers them so poorly that there is probably no point in wasting time on it. The main thing is that he is calm now, although this could very well be a real trap. And considering what kind of person he is, this could be true. She thought that he would at least ask him what he did to displease her or want to take revenge. But he even asks if she really didn't miss him, as if he really doesn't believe that she could do what she's talking about to him, and she doesn't even know what to tell him. He tries to touch her, asks to give her his hand. What worries her is that he is somehow too kind. She has never seen him like this. She is very confused by the fact that people cannot change so much without a reason, especially considering this whole situation. A normal person, as soon as he hears that someone wanted him dead and did everything possible for this, cannot react so calmly to this and say that she did not miss him. All this is somehow strange. There is definitely something wrong here. It is important for her not to give in to emotions now, because the chance that this is a trap is greater than the chance that everything will continue so well and she will not be held accountable for her actions. Suddenly, her husband asked her if she knew, which was really strange. and at the end he even called her his dear wife. He says that he doesn't understand how he cannot remember his death. At that moment she wanted to ask what he was doing then and where he was all this time, but she is afraid that it is too early for such questions. She even came to terms with the fact that he is really alive. Now it is very important for her to understand how all this happened and what happened to him these years. He probably communicated with someone, lived somewhere, and was unlikely to be homeless or survive without a piece of bread. At that moment, he himself wanted to figure out this situation, and he also seemed to not take into account the fact that, in fact, she was the one because of whom all this happened. The husband began to tell what had happened to him. He, as he had already said, repeated that he remembered how they had a good time with her, and then he woke up in the dark, clawed his way out, and then saw that it was his grave. There can only be one explanation for this. Maybe he was in some kind of coma, maybe unconscious or something like that. The strangest thing for him was when he started talking to people, and they looked at him like he was a monster and said he should have died. And he is also very upset that those who threw him into the ground did not even bother to find out the reason for his death. And also, if they had examined him more closely, perhaps it would have turned out that it was not death at all. And then the fun began. He told her that he needed her help. It sounded like a request that couldn't be refused. Hua started smiling with his special look, and as far as she knows, this is very bad. Maybe even personally for her. The husband explained that he planned to study everything that happened that day on the estate, and preferably in its surroundings. Since no one will tell him anything just like that, he knows only one way to do it, to beat information out of them through pain. Now she recognizes her husband, but this is most likely not all that he had in mind. The guy probably said very little so that she would not be too scared. When she asked if this was the only way he could think of, he asked if she cared. And she also said that this is exactly what he does best. And after this phrase, Bakri tensed up again. This may know that if everything happens again and she has to come up with something again to save people, there is no guarantee that after a while he will not come again. Like this unexpectedly, when everyone will think that he is not alive. Meanwhile, some time passed. The girl was sitting quietly in her kitchen, not waiting for anyone, when suddenly some girl came to her. She apologized for coming unannounced, but explained that she had something very important to say, or rather, to ask. She literally insists then that Madame move out of here. And immediately, only it sounds like it's some kind of joke. She also asks how many things she has that she will have to take with her. And the lady, without further ado, replied that there is not that much here. It's not clear yet what's going on here. That girl talks too much that Bakri doesn't even have time to say anything. It turns out that she had been preparing for this move for a long time, because the conditions here are not the best. And this lady is as happy for her as if she were for herself. She tells her that now life will be filled with bright colors, that everything will get better. But Bakri is not sure about this. Something tells her that sooner or later, Hua will understand everything, and at that very second will try to do to her the same thing that she did to him. And also, if this happens, her family will not sit idly by. They will definitely come to take revenge, and as a result, a war may begin. Bakri tries not to show how hard it is for her. After all, even if she does, no one will understand her anyway. Meanwhile, the assistant had already packed all her things for her. She did it with pleasure, because today she had too much energy that needed to be put somewhere. It turns out that her husband arranged all this. He ordered to move his wife to a better room, although there is nothing wrong with that. Something still really bothers Bakri. And in the meantime, the guy is walking around the area. Right now, the weather outside is such that it is impossible to sit in the house. He thought he would just walk there and back, but he heard a pleasant melody that immediately made him want to get closer to its source. Unexpectedly for himself, he suddenly changed his mind and returned. And there was already his wife who had just unpacked her things. She didn't think he would come so quickly, and she also thought that they would sleep in different rooms. And then she herself was surprised how she could have even thought that. They were husband and wife after all. She feels so awkward in front of him that she can't say a few words. She just gets embarrassed and thinks that, if only he was in a good mood. He really liked the way she looked now. She was much more beautiful than in the clothes he saw her in this morning. As expected, she greeted him and said that she was glad to see him, and also asked what she could do for him. He asked her to stop addressing him so formally. After all, They were not strangers, and she was not his servant. And after that, he asked to let him make tea for her. Only it sounds so ambiguous that now she will be afraid to try it. Nothing is clear from his smile. It's as if he's mocking her and doesn't even hide it. Meanwhile, he very gently touches her hair, her face, and at the same time asks if she, by any chance, knows a person named Jang Yoon. After that, he said that this man was her first fiancé. And this sounds even stranger than everything he said before. Fa started to tell that this guy had rejected all the marriage proposals that had come his way over the years. She has no idea what to say to this. And her husband continues to talk about how that guy lives as if he has been in mourning all his life. But it's not clear what he is trying to tell her with this. In the end, she thought it was better to answer him what he wanted to hear and not provoke a conflict once again. If she thinks about why he is talking to her for this person, she will only feel worse. She will get tired and will not be able to talk to him normally. As usual, the strange questions continue. He suddenly changed the subject and asked to tell her what she likes. The girl asked without thinking why he was asking about this, and then realized that it was better to just answer the question and not bother. He explains this by saying that he feels like he knows too much about her, so he would like to learn more in a short time. She is somewhat reassured by the fact that he is interested in this, because it means that he is definitely not going to harm her in the near future. Otherwise, he would have done it right now without further ado. Strangely, without waiting for an answer to the first question, he asked if she would like to, died again, and disappeared from her life. Although she would very much like this, but telling him about it is the same as agreeing to everything happening the other way around. So she asked why he was interested in this. She also said that she didn't quite understand what he was getting at, and asked him to tell her right away what she needed to know. Her imagination starts working. She already imagines how he pounces on her and says that now she will answer for everything that he did. Now she must know that he is deceiving her and actually remembers everything. Otherwise, he would not have asked this question. At that moment, she remembers that the only reason she was able to get rid of her husband 3 years ago was because she was able to lower his guard, and he also thought she didn't know how to fight. In the end, she decided to play this game with him further, asked why he was asking her about this, because what happened, happened, and if he wants to take revenge on her, then he can do it. Maybe he answered that he was just curious how much she hated him, although he could have chosen another question for that. The girl said that if that's all it was, then they could do something to make each other truly love each other, although in fact she didn't need it. She was just repeating as much as possible what she did last time to weaken his vigilance. And when he came closer to her, she could not restrain herself and said again that she had never hated him and that he could be sure of it. From his reaction, it is clear that he expected to hear something else, when suddenly he also asked where she learned acting, as if he is directly saying that he knows that she is still deceiving him. I wonder where this is all heading and how it will all end, because the situation is getting more heated with every second. He tells her that he can't believe that she loved him and still loves him, considering that it is impossible to have a person like him who has caused hundreds of people to suffer. He even called her a very brave girl, although since he understands everything, why can't he talk to her directly, to the point? He is behaving too strangely, because after his words that he does not believe her, it is not clear what is holding him back from taking revenge on her. And then he says that, as she already knows, he is not one of those people who plays these games. And this already looks like he will now talk to her as he thinks, without all these hints. One might think that they are starting a serious conversation, but he still gets her to say that she really does hate him, and if she had the chance, she would do the same. It seems like until she says it, he won't be able to do anything to her, which is also incredibly strange. She has wanted to leave here for a long time, but she has no choice. She must control herself, no matter how long it lasts. Meanwhile, the guy asked, "What is that in her hand?" Because literally a couple of minutes ago, she was not holding anything. The girl replied that she thought they could rest now, so she took some yarn to knit a little. She said that all these years she has been embroidering even during morning, so it has already become a habit and she cannot imagine her day without sewing. He says he can't imagine how she can do this. Although, how can you even compare women's hobbies with men's? It's the same as if she said she doesn't understand how he could have liked to destroy people before, or how someone likes to swing swords and why people study their whole lives for this. She could have argued with him about this, but she didn't. After all, her future directly depended on it. She can't wait for the moment when he leaves here or asks her to leave herself. For example, to go for a walk or do something, just so she doesn't have to stand here with him. She was tired of smiling at him, pretending that everything was okay. Although inside she hated this man more than she hated anything or anyone in this world. She regretted that she was sad about him when she thought he died. She already wants him to somehow disappear from her life. It is clear that there never was and never will be a normal relationship between them. So she is left with either running away from him or repeating the same scenario. She is so fed up with this look of his that it is simply impossible to describe in words, and in general, the situation looks like some kind of mockery. First, he asks her some strange questions that don't make sense. Then he asks if she would like to destroy him again, although no sane person would answer this question honestly. She even gets the impression that something is wrong with him. She is ready to believe that he has gone crazy than that a person can seriously behave like that. They don't even have a normal, constructive dialogue. The girl feels in danger and he smiles as if she is already trapped. The circus didn't end there. He suggested that she count to 10 together, and for some reason he also said that she needed to do it before midnight. She had no choice but to agree and support this idea. Otherwise, it is unknown how he would have reacted if she had refused. She had already begun to pray that someone would come to them. For example, some assistant who would ask him to go somewhere, at least for a short while. Here she will go crazy sooner or later, because she already imagines what will happen next when he counts to a certain number, because they have already counted to 10 a long time ago. She is simply speechless. And there is also the impression that he has stopped noticing her, and maybe this is even for the better. Suddenly, he starts to open his eyes and says that it's already midnight and he's still here, which means that if she thought he was a ghost, he's not. Then he got so furious that she was about to start running away from him because it was simply impossible to look into those maddened eyes. Finally, the girl took the risk to ask what all this meant and what he was trying to explain to her, because she didn't understand anything, not even a word. It seems easier to call some doctor for him than to try to understand what is happening to him now. And then the guy realizes that some images start appearing in his head, as if he is not in control of himself. How he tries to get life energy, as if through screams and deaths of other people, and he feels as if it is important to him that this is only his doing. If he asks someone else to do it, the result will not be what he needs. He himself became scared of it. He simply never saw himself from the outside and didn't even imagine what the people who encountered him saw. Now he fully understands why many people look at him as if he is some kind of monster or something even worse. Very unexpectedly, but at this moment he begins to tell her since when he became so ruthless towards all living things around him. It's very simple. As a child, everyone told him that he was a nobody and that it would be better for him to just stand aside and not attract much attention to himself. He was also constantly compared to strong boys his age who had achieved much more than he had at the time. His mother thought, moreover, even told him it as it was, that he had disappointed her and that she would like to be proud of him. But probably this would never happen, she thought. He begins to explain that he always strived to make everyone afraid of him and hide from him in corners. As he once was in this place, his goal was to become such that no one would dare to say something as offensive to him as his mother used to say. Sarcom. The girl noticed that he wanted to say someone else but interrupted him and asked, since he has not proven to himself more than once that he is strong, powerful, and not only with me, why can't he stop? If you look the truth in the eye, he just increases his self-esteem at the expense of others, taking their lives. He replied that he had thought about it many times, but for some reason he couldn't stop. It was as if his mother appeared before his eyes saying that he wouldn't last long. He really has a serious childhood trauma that needs to be dealt with. The guy himself understands this, but doubts that there is someone in this world who can return him to normal life and rid him of this feeling of always being first. It seems that while he is trying to talk to her, the girl already understands how she can personally help him. Maybe the thing is that he has been trying his whole life to hear some kind of praise, some kind of admiration from people from the outside. And since no one has ever told him anything like that, because he does very bad things, because of this, he cannot stop, because he has not achieved his goal. She just told him about it. He immediately wanted to release aggression, but fortunately, he stopped in time. The wife simply realized for herself how she could help him, even if he doesn't notice it. But she will try to do so in order to eradicate his problem. While she pretends to listen to him, she thinks about where to start, because at the very least he should be in a good mood. And in order for it to appear, the lady decided to do it and said that when he is angry, some kind of attractive energy comes from him, which is simply mesmerizing. By some miracle, she managed to calm him down until the end of the day. The next day had already arrived, and from the very morning, they decided to go to the temple. None of them have been here for a long time, and this is also a great opportunity to be together and make him get used to her and be kinder. The girl tries to periodically tell him how resilient he is. They climb the steps very high. Although she sees that it is also very difficult for him, she still says that she cannot imagine how he is not tired yet. It's clear that he's becoming much kinder. At least he doesn't talk so much. He's probably thinking about why she suddenly started telling him such things. Here they are already going inside. This is such a sacred place that it is forbidden to even think about anything bad. And they also say that, having come here, even the most terrible villains are healed and become less cruel. Apparently, this is another reason why the girl came here with her husband and made him feel like he was here at least a little. He doesn't even have to pray. It's enough for him to just come here. At least she believes it. You need to use any methods that come to mind. The case is difficult, so you can't give up on any idea. So as not to upset them once again, she does not look in his direction, because it is obvious that he does not really like this adventure from the very morning. This is far from the time when he is used to waking up. It is strange that for her sake he agreed to this and did not even change his mind along the way. Still, she tries to look at him, just in case, to at least understand whether he is simply in a bad mood or completely in a bad mood. My husband is already unhappy that it is very dirty here, despite the fact that this place is sacred. But he did not take into account the fact that it is very far to go here, and it is not always possible to keep this place clean, especially in rainy weather. And also, few people agree to work under such conditions, to go to the mountain every day, and after that, also to restore order here. The girl tries not to get distracted, but he seems to be doing it on purpose, spoiling the whole atmosphere. Apparently, the rumors turned out to be a lie. He doesn't become any kinder. It got to the point that he was already starting to make comments to her, as if she was doing everything wrong and that she needed to stand and hold her hands in a completely different way. She did as he told her, but he still doesn't like anything. He's already starting to pick on the smell, and it looks like he's testing her patience again. She has no choice but to start praying that her husband will no longer hold a grudge against his mother because he no longer knows what to do about it. His case is so difficult that she can only hope for higher powers because she once saw for herself that if you ask nicely, a wish can come true. She promises him that it will take literally no more than half an hour. He agrees and says that as soon as that time passes, he will leave, even if she needs to stay for a couple of seconds. At that moment, she felt that the sacred statue in front of her seemed to smile even more. And usually they say, this is felt only when a wish is heard. This is probably the last way she can help both herself and him, and if nothing helps, all that remains is to trust fate and stop resisting. Hua almost laughed at her several times because he thought it was a waste of time, and she hadn't even told him what exactly she was praying for. Otherwise, he would have definitely left here, although he initially said that he would also take part in this. Now the guy has changed his mind and can't wait for them to finally leave here. After the prayer, Bekri really did feel a little better. She was even able to relax, although she understands that it won't last long. To cope with all this stress that surrounds her, you literally have to spend the night here and not leave at all. She even dared to tell him about it, and he reacted as if he hadn't tried yet, and she was already complaining about something. Meanwhile, they had already returned home. It was evening outside. They got back more or less normally, although she thought that nothing would work out that easily. A miracle happened. He was silent almost all the time, and she was relaxing and enjoying the beautiful views around. It is unclear from what kind of fatigue, physical or mental, Bekri fell asleep while sitting, and he looks at this and wonders how this can happen. While he was looking at her, he admitted to himself that her face completely corresponded to his preferences in girls' faces. Then he began to look at her even more closely. Looked at her figure. It was also perfect. I wonder why he suddenly thought about it. It turns out that from the first second he saw her after so much time, he endures his desire to get her completely and entirely. Maybe it's not visible, but she evokes very pleasant emotions in him. He feels that she is like his person, but at the same time, he can be angry with her, just like with others. For some reason, it happens that immediately when he thinks about something good, his mother appears in his thoughts, who is constantly unhappy with something. He even caught himself thinking that he had never seen her smiling. Whenever he approached her before to spend time together, he saw every time how unhappy she was about it. The woman seemed to be hinting that she didn't have the same love for him that he had for her. It's just a pity that he didn't understand this right away, but only in adulthood when it was too late. She was so rude to him that she could hit him for no reason, just because she saw him nearby. Every time it hurt him, but he never told her about it or asked why she did this to him. He was always trying to please her, helping her, being a calm and perfect child, but he never deserved her love. Maybe then he just encountered this injustice and thought that he should do the same towards other people who didn't even do anything bad to him and didn't even think about it. He remembers every time she hurt him. It was terribly humiliating, but somehow he still loved her for a very long time. When she was alive, he hoped that she might change, that it wouldn't always be like this. But he was very wrong. Sometimes he had the thought that maybe he should treat her the same way she treated him, but the belief that she still loved him won out. He couldn't say a single bad word to her. He allowed her to treat him the way she wanted. For him, she was a holy woman who, if she does or says something, it means it's necessary. She just kept telling him the same thing, that he deserved it. But if he were different, then she would treat him differently. There was not a drop of love for her child in her eyes, and when other people tried to tell her about it, she stopped communicating with them. At the same time, she was one of those who loved to teach other people how to live, but she herself did not accept anything like that in herself. The most offensive thing is that with her behavior, she ruined not only the life of her child, but also the lives of the people who suffered from him. After her death, he continued to think that maybe it was really his fault, and his mother knew better what he deserved. But many people don't even think about the fact that all their troubles are because of one person, and one could say that it's not even the Hua himself, but his mother. I wonder if she knew that everything would turn out like this, and that so many people would suffer. Would she have changed her attitude towards her son, or would she have changed nothing? And meanwhile, the next day came. They were so tired yesterday that they didn't even talk. They just went to bed and fell asleep in a matter of seconds. And when they opened their eyes, they realized that they had apparently tossed and turned too much in their sleep, and that some parts of their bodies were naked. The wife wanted to get off the bed but accidentally tripped and touched him, and because of this, a slightly awkward situation arose. And she also feels terribly uncomfortable because he might have woken up at night and seen her like this. Although for him, there probably isn't any problem with that. It's also strange why she's even worried about this. They're husband and wife, and he's seen her like this more than once. The girl asked with a trembling voice if he had seen anything extra, and he said with a smile that he had actually woken up with her, and if she hadn't mentioned it, he wouldn't have even noticed anything. And then he realized that it was important to talk about this, because at the very least, they were husband and wife, and even if he saw something, there would be nothing wrong with it. And he also felt a little uncomfortable that she was embarrassed to be naked in front of him, to which she began to explain to him that, in fact, after such a long time apart, she, as a girl, feels uncomfortable and thinks that he should understand this. Because if he were in her place, it would be a completely different matter. But from his reaction, it is clear that he does not understand her at all. Then she simply suggested to stop talking about it. There was no point in it anyway, especially since they didn't need extra topics for conflict. Now it is much more important to think about how they will have breakfast, because she really wants to be alone at this moment. And the problem is that he needs to tell her about it somehow, and in such a way that he doesn't think that she's already tired of him. Meanwhile, several hours passed. She, as she wanted, had breakfast separately, changed her clothes, and began her duties. Or rather, the things that she hasn't been able to complete for so long, ever since the day her husband returned. Somehow, he had his own important things to do, so she hasn't seen him for half a day. She has wanted this for so long that she is afraid every time the book comes up, she feels like it could always be him. For example, now an assistant came up to her just to ask how he could help her, and she is trying to calm down because she is very worried. She greeted him, said that she didn't know what to tell him yet, and thanked him for his attention. This assistant tries to be useful every time he sees her, so she very often tries to reward him. She would have been happy to talk to him, but as she felt, her husband came up to them and ruined everything. For some reason, he asked why she doesn't do anything. Although he didn't tell her anything like that, at the very least, she doesn't have to. The girl can lie on the bed all day and do nothing. So I don't quite understand what this question is about. She asked what was wrong, and he started listing some things that we servants should do, but definitely not her. Even the assistant standing next to him doesn't understand, since when the mistress is obliged to keep order in the garden. Just so he wouldn't get nervous, she replied that if necessary, she could think of something, but still hinted that she had nothing like that in her plans for today. In the end, that guy left. The girl never had time to have a proper rest from her husband, but there's nothing to be done. She'll have to keep him company. The guy, as usual, started asking how she imagined their life together, whether they had a chance to be together for a long time, and, in general, whether she wanted it. He understands that after so much time, her tastes and preferences in people, as well as plans for life, could have changed. So this is a very good question, but he is not the kind of person to whom you can easily tell the truth. Bakri asked him to postpone this conversation for another day, because today she wants to relax. He replied that, of course, as she wishes, but made it clear that this conversation could not be avoided. He is, after all, a serious person who does not want to waste time and is not used to putting anything off for later. Suddenly, she was so touched by this topic that she herself began to ask him some questions that had been tormenting her for a long time. For example, what does he have against her, and what is the likelihood that sooner or later he will have a desire to get rid of her? He asked why she was even thinking about such things, to which the girl replied that she was not a small child and understood perfectly well that he should at least have had such thoughts. In his place, she would hate herself, and under the guise of normal relations, she would plan something to take revenge. He says that not all people are like that, and not everyone thinks like her, although Bakri knows this person very well, and now he is most likely playing the role of a normal person who has no bad intentions. Each time she herself wants to figure everything out as quickly as possible. Even if she finds out a truth that she doesn't like, she decided for herself that if he didn't want to talk about it directly, she would definitely find out the truth. Because living in constant fear that this person might just be wearing a mask and hiding their real face is not something anyone would like. Suddenly, he invited her to some place, asked her not to be afraid and just to look inside for a little while. It turns out that this is a very popular restaurant. This place is famous for its unusual dishes that may seem salty, but in fact they taste like dessert. She thought that everything here must be very expensive. He literally felt these thoughts in her and said that she could not look at the prices and order as much as she could eat. I wonder why he does this. Because he could have just not bothered and asked the servants to prepare dinner for them. Hua was so persistent that he simply grabbed her hand and without further ado began to escort her to the table. Bakri started looking around to invite the waiter and order something, and then he says that he has already thought of everything and ordered food in advance. He started telling me that this is his favorite place. He comes here at least once a week because the music and staff are especially nice here. He is interested in how she feels here and is sure that she definitely liked this surprise, although you can't tell from her face. It's very strange that he is so cold towards her. She acts completely differently. If he didn't care about her, he wouldn't have invited her here, and even more so, he wouldn't have prepared for a regular dinner like that. It turns out that their meeting was not accidental from the start, and the more the girl thinks about it, the more she is sure that he could have it all much more global, and this is just one step in his big plan. And that's not all. The husband began to remember that when they were together many years ago, that he almost did not give her freedom, kept her at home all the time, and knew literally about her every step. Is he really saying that he wants to change this time? That's why he's arranging this date so that she can see that he's starting to change for her sake? For now, this may remain a dream. You just need to look at how he behaves and not believe empty words. It is clear that every time he tries to tell her something or answer her, the guy thinks over every word so as not to say anything unnecessary. This suggests that he is trying to stick to some kind of image and tells her only what is required, and in the meantime, food has already been brought for them. This time he ordered the usual items so that he could leave the most interesting for the next time, because this is an ordinary day when you can eat something more or less familiar. They were greeted by a waitress. She smiles, tells about each dish, but the bakery is somehow completely upset. Only when the waitress looked at her, she smiled at her, but it was not real and very noticeable. Finally, the waitress said that if they wanted to call her again, they could just look in her direction. She would see it and come over right away. Bakery tried their signature tea. It was so good that she immediately got in the mood. The guy at this moment is carefully watching to make sure she likes everything. But if he sees that something is wrong, he will be upset for a very long time. Unlike how everything was literally a couple of minutes ago, now the situation has changed noticeably. The girl is enjoying her tea and can't tear herself away from it. It seems like they're going to need another helping because she won't stop there. And in the meantime, he's already helping himself to food because he's finally convinced that she likes it here. He took his favorite dish for himself and offered her to try it too, and also promised that she would like it just as much as the tea. And it's not just his favorite dish. It's the signature recipe of this establishment, which can be seen literally on every table. She tells him that it is really very nice here. If she had the opportunity, she would come here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Hua is now completely calm. He happily eats his freshest piece of fish and enjoys the moment, just as he wanted. You can tell by him how much he likes it here. He loves this place so much that he apparently sincerely wanted her to enjoy being here too. The girl thanked him for this dinner. She is not full yet, but she already feels what a pleasant aftertaste they will leave here with. And she also sees some positions for the first time in her life. So she asked how to eat them correctly so as not to embarrass herself. Suddenly, the husband promised that he would definitely show it to her, but for now he wants to tell her something very important. In fact, they brought it here not only to have lunch, they have one good deed here. They need to make a big enough scene to attract everyone's attention and use it to trap one person who plans to visit one place today. She doesn't quite understand yet what he means, who and where they should lure. In any case, she wouldn't mind a little adventure. The guy started telling the story of some Huamajin who fulfills the horrible requests of the annex guests using a colorless, odorless aphrodisiac of his own making. Before serving, he mixes it into rice soup and sometimes into tea. The girl just heard the word tea. She already felt uneasy. She asked how he could see that she was drinking it and was silent, to which he replied that she should listen to him carefully. He became the one who can no longer just dispose of the lives of others, and that already sounds good. He also says that she is his look to stop Huamuji's actions. They will need the help of her older brother because he is an official who investigates criminal cases in the city. The girl feels very ambivalent, and meanwhile her husband says that he, as the head of the criminal world, cannot address him directly, so he wants to ask her to do it. And for the same reason, they decided to let it out loud that she was drugged with some forbidden ingredients, so that the brother himself would want to sort out this situation, since this matter concerns his sister. The only thing that matters to her is that it is safe and thought out to the smallest detail. Otherwise, she will be very worried and will not be able to help properly. And in the meantime, he answered her question, explained that hers was absolutely safe because the waitress who was working today, she came to this job only for one day and added medicine to the tea in advance so that the drink would be absolutely harmless to her body. After that, she certainly felt better. But such sudden statements gave her a headache because at first he said that they came here for lunch and then this. And now, so that she could decide whether she wanted to participate in this or not, he briefly described what the purpose of this mission was, namely, to use the chance to save the young women trapped by the villain. Otherwise, they would leave that trap only after their own death. No other way. Bakri tells him that he forgot one thing. Her body doesn't just heat up from such changes. She literally feels sick. When she is very worried, afraid of something, or feels some responsibility, her nose starts bleeding, her head hurts, and she loses consciousness. Lucky that she warned him about it in time. The girl is already starting to fall to the floor, and if she hadn't said anything, he would have no idea what happened to him and why. He was also so worried about her that he began to feel guilty because probably she needed to be prepared somehow for this conversation and not to start everything so abruptly. Literally, a couple of minutes passed. Hua is already near some person. He demands an explanation from him. How dare he harm his wife? He says that he would never do that and doesn't understand what you're talking about. And also asks for an apology for the fact that Hua came here as if it were his own home and behaved inappropriately. Some assistant came up to them. He tries to resolve the conflict and suggests to start by going outside into the fresh air, to which the guy replied that he would not take a single step to the side until he dragged this villain away from here to be punished. Meanwhile, Bekri is not getting any better. She is so bad that she does not stop coughing and her face is only getting redder. While the heat spreads through her body, she feels very cold outside. This warm blanket is not enough for her, but it is simply impossible to warm her up any better. In those moments when she manages to fall asleep for a couple of minutes, she is still slightly conscious and, at the same time, sees terrible dreams. Meanwhile, her husband's assistant had already found something that could serve as evidence. The guy allowed him to enter because he himself would definitely not have found anything like that. This guy says that in one of the corners of the kitchen, they found a colorless, odorless aphrodisiac. There was even a label on the bottle so that the staff wouldn't mix it up, which means everyone knew about it and kept quiet. That is, the villain currently has a lot of accomplices, even more than you can imagine. The assistant also said that they had heard stories about the suspicious behavior of the maid, and more than one. After such statements, it was decided to contain the villain and take him to the authorities so that they could deal with him properly, and he asks how they dare to tie him up, the ruler of Chakwagan. Everyone did not hear these words. They began to treat him even more rudely so that he understood that he had no influence on anyone, at least until his innocence was proven. Hua smiles as if he had long dreamed of doing this, and now this moment has finally come. And who would have thought that he could ever become on the side of good? He thanked the judge for the right decision and said that he appreciated his work and the time he spent for them. The only thing a suspect can do is call everyone around him names. That's what he's doing right now. And he also said that they will all apologize to him when everyone finds out that he was falsely accused. It's amazing how he can even say such a thing. Apparently, he thinks that there are still those who believe him and will change their minds about detaining him after such words. Meanwhile, the girl has already woken up, but she is not getting any better. She feels that the heat in her body is rising up to her head, then going down to her feet and so on constantly. She has never felt so terrible before. And she is also afraid that her condition may worsen and she simply won't be able to bear it. Although even now it can't be said that she is coping with this torment. She thought about how nice it would be if someone were nearby now and could somehow hold her. As soon as she thought about it, her husband returned to her, and she was happy just from his presence. For some reason, she thought that he was somewhere far away, but Hua turned out to be much closer than she thought. Apparently, he didn't want to leave her here alone, and that's also very nice. The girl thought to see how sorry he was to look at her in such a state, but when he smiled and began to approach, she did not understand what was happening. Of course, she had thoughts about why he was looking at her like that, because she knew that look very well. But she couldn't even imagine that she had thought everything correctly. He slowly starts to take off her socks, asks her to relax. For her, it looks as if he decided to take advantage of her weak state. But inside, there is hope that this is not connected in any way, and he is just doing this solely out of feelings for her. She didn't have time to figure out what was going on, and at some point, it was too late to resist. He was already climbing onto her bed. So that his wife wouldn't be afraid, he promised to do everything very slowly because he knows that this is the only way girls can get real pleasure. As soon as Bakri calmed down, she realized that he had deceived her and had started doing everything at once without preparation. She stopped understanding what was happening, or rather with what intention he was doing this, taking advantage of her or to make her feel better. The worst thing about this whole situation is that because of the ingredient that was added to her tea, she can't raise her arm normally. She explains that she can't move, and he smiles after that, which only makes her more wary. This means that if she doesn't like something, she won't even be able to stop him and will have to endure it until the end. The guy says that it's even good that she can't move freely while taking off her clothes. And she was so scared that she started crying, and the girl started begging him not to joke like that, because it wasn't funny. Here he already took off all his clothes, reminded her not to be afraid of him and to relax, because that is the most important thing. Then he began to return to her bed, And at that moment, the wife felt like never before. She is afraid to tell him that she is scared because she doesn't know how he will react to it and what he is trying to achieve. The very moment had come. All she had to do was hold her breath and wait for him to leave her. The husband also asked to look him straight in the eyes. He wants to see her emotions. Only it sounded like mockery, as if he doesn't see that she doesn't want it. He also says that this is a gift for her, because he thinks that living 3 years without a husband is very difficult in this regard. This sounds just awful. She is not going to talk to him. She will remain silent until the very end, so that at least in this way he will understand that she is not delighted and that this is not what she needs from him. And at some point, Bakri began to feel like she was about to lose control of herself, but she didn't know if it was good or bad. On the one hand, she is not so disgusted and hurt that she goes to finish everything, but on the other hand, this is not the person next to whom she feels safe. And his arms are so strong and he's so heavy that even if she decided to leave him, even if she could move, she wouldn't be able to do anything. With all this, he says that she is very beautiful without clothes and he likes her much more than with them. He wants her to desire him just as much as he desires her and is ready to do everything possible for this, even if he has to stay here for the whole day. In the end, everything went much faster than she thought. It's very good, but when this will happen again, one can only guess. They already went out with him on the street together. He didn't go anywhere without her, and this could mean that everything that happened between them was real feelings. At least for him, it was definitely so. She still has some strange state. She no longer thinks about her health. She is more interested in what is happening between them. If you don't take into account the past, he looks like the perfect husband. At least he hasn't done anything bad yet. And then it started. She thought at least now he would leave her alone. But no, the guy again began to hint that she was not doing anything. He offered her to clean the area, but she doesn't know how to politely ask him why he keeps hinting about it. In his usual style, he quickly changed the subject and began to say that the rescued slaves from the annex were being transferred to the Chongseryong. And since this is not a pleasant sight, this act of kindness will surely spread from mouth to mouth very quickly. To which she says that this good deed was done with her help, and he says that she saw the state these slaves were in, as if hinting at something. After which she thought that it was true. If they had arrived even a little later, many would have been in danger. The boy became sad. He said very quietly that his late mother was from Chunyagar. The lady just heard this and thought that since it was so, then he must surely know how everything works from the inside. In fact, she never really thought about whether this person needed a family. Suddenly, someone starts screaming for help. Someone needs more bandages, and of course, she couldn't pass by. The girl ran to find out what happened, and it turns out that they just make some kind of dish with the help of bandages. They insist on it, so no one got hurt, as she initially thought. When she looks at all these people, she feels very happy in her soul that everyone's condition is improving, because if it were not so, she would think that it would be impossible to help them. Bekri thought to get ahead of her husband so that he wouldn't say once again that she's not doing anything. The girl came to one woman and offered to feed her, because she knows that for some it's very difficult to do, especially if the food is hot. And also, since the medicine was too bitter, she added something to it to neutralize the taste, and she succeeded. The woman thanked the girl because she usually has to do it herself, and her hands shake so much that everything spills on her clothes, and the assistants don't always notice that she needs help. Bakri promised that when she has the opportunity, she will try to come more often to help here, especially since she likes doing good deeds, especially for those people who appreciate it. Words cannot describe how pleasant it is for a woman to hear this. She always dreamed of her children helping her in her old age, but she lost them very early and thought that she would never know what it was like. After she told this story, the girl thought that it was nothing for her to help this man eat soup, but for him it was as valuable as anything else. In the meantime, some assistant came to them. She was free and offered to replace the bakery in case she suddenly had some business. The girl would like to stay here for a while longer, but she understands that she cannot stay for long, so she gladly accepted this offer. At first, she thought about refusing and spending as much time with the woman as she could, but she thought that she needed to find a middle ground, and thanks to this assistant, she would succeed. Bakri wished the woman a good day and said that they would definitely see each other soon. Half an hour later, in order not to sit idle, Becky came to that same assistant and asked how she could help, because she saw how hard it was for them to cope, and she was bored and had nothing to do. She asked what needed to be done, but the girl was not used to giving orders. So she thought for a long time about what she could suggest. And then she realized that instead of coming up with some case, it would be better to take the opportunity and tell what happened to her recently, namely how she was threatened. Monica thought that Chung Saryong was safe, but it turned out to be wrong. Bakri didn't understand what she meant and asked her to explain what happened. And if she could help, then of course she would do it. And then this girl's eyes change. For some reason, she starts apologizing, and Bakri felt that something was wrong. When she felt that it could be dangerous here, she thought that this couldn't happen. But now, as soon as Monica swung a sharp object at her, she realized that she was not mistaken. The assistant is clearly not who she claims to be. Only the question arises, how dare she do what in relation to her master's wife? Bakri miraculously managed to dodge. Her hair was only slightly damaged. Otherwise, she is fine, but not mentally. She started asking her what was going on and why she suddenly became like this. And Monica was already running away, and along the way, she continued throwing some sharp objects at her. Then she came back to her a minute later and was already acting as if the Bakri was sitting in front of her, completely tied up and couldn't scream to call someone for help. The lady begs her to stop. She didn't even think to try to run away. She was probably very scared and saw that Monica couldn't be stopped, and what if she would still run after her? Here she is already swinging at her with all her might. It is clear that she is not going to talk, and in the Bakri's head there is simply incomprehensible something going on. She knows the assistant as a very nice girl, but now it looks like some kind of demon has possessed her. In fact, she has some skills to defend herself. The only question is whether she will make things worse. After that, she accidentally looked to the side and saw a familiar silhouette. But when she looked closer, she once again couldn't believe her eyes. Her husband was standing there, calmly looking, and probably hadn't just come there. He folded his arms, stood calmly near the tree, breathing the air as if nothing was happening. At the very last moment, she pulled herself together and started to run away from her. But Monica was clearly prepared. She runs after her so fast that they can run like this until the evening, if of course the Bakri has enough strength. Meanwhile, the assistant approached the gentleman and asked if he understood correctly that the Hua was going to just stand there and watch his wife in danger, to which he asked why help someone who can run without even losing breath. And this means that he knows something about her. His wife can not only defend herself, but also run fast for a long time. Only Monica does not know about this yet. Now it is clear why the girl waited until the last minute. She just knew that at any moment she would just run away and be safe. While they weren't talking, they didn't notice how his wife was already running straight towards him. But now the situation could turn out anyway. Naturally, Monica noticed this and stopped in time. Although from such a distance, the gentleman probably saw her face and understood what was happening. She was afraid to approach, began to slowly move away in the opposite direction, which means that she definitely did it on her own. Not on his orders, because from the outside it looked exactly like that. Bakri noticed that the girl was no longer so close. She relaxed a little because she understood that Monica would not risk running after her and then have to explain everything, although she would probably have to do it anyway. It's very interesting what will come out of this, because at the very least, the lady can tell her husband everything and Monica will be fired even today. Everything depends on her decision, whether she wants to deal with her through her husband or in some other way. They created such a hurricane that there was a lot of dust in the air that settled very slowly, and because of it, it became difficult to breathe. Instead of asking how she feels and trying to punish that assistant, he asked how much longer this circus can go on, because even if all that dust were me, it wouldn't hurt her. It seems he knows her too well, and she has many more abilities than others know. It turns out that she can not only run for a long time and defend herself, but is also resistant to poisons. Could it mean that when she was lying on the bed and showing everyone how bad she felt, that it was not real, but so that those who want to harm her would seriously think that they succeeded? She started telling him that it was better not to talk about this in a public place, but he no longer cared who could hear them. It is important for him to know why she hides her skills, because it can be very dangerous for her. For example, if she really gets sick, he will not understand whether she really needs help or not. And he would also really like to know who the person was who taught her all this, because she couldn't have learned everything on her own, especially since he had never seen this kind of art before. To herself, Bekri thought that she could not answer this question because she had made a promise to her master, and this, first of all, as a rule, is unbreakable. He really doesn't like that there is something she can hide from him, especially being his wife, to whom even he tells some of his secrets. And in the meantime, the day has come when the man who is suspected of crimes against the mistress and master will answer for everything he has done. Everyone has gathered in this place since the morning. A lot of people want to see the traitor, and many are also surprised that it turned out to be someone no one would have thought of if it weren't for the evidence that confirms it. This is the same person who made sure that the lady's cup of tea contained a substance from which the only way to escape is to find an antidote. For the gentleman, this day is one of the best in recent times because he finally brought the matter to an end and showed that he has changed. To begin with, they put him on a special table and started beating him with huge sticks. And for added effect, these sticks have spikes so that the culprit gets what he deserves, as he should. Everyone around is of the opinion that since he is capable of taking someone's life, it is fair to at least cause him terrible pain, and only then, at the discretion of the main one, decide whether he deserves to live on or not. And right after the accused was punished, the girl decided to write a letter to her brother to tell him what was new with them. This is what she wrote to him: "My dear older brother, this is your younger sister. Last time you were at the pavilion, the situation almost got out of control. Thanks to everyone's efforts, everything was resolved safely, and it seems that this has eased my husband's anger. Today, our third brother is coming to town to help with the remaining affairs." While she was writing this letter, she was thinking how truly happy she was that everything was finally over. And most importantly, now she had no reason to be afraid of her husband, because he had proven that he had become different. All this time he was right next to her, and now he started talking about whether to let the villain who tried to harm her at the well go or not. It still needs to be decided, and he also wants to ask what she personally thinks about this, because probably she knows better how to deal with them. To which she told him that she fully supported the option of punishing them exactly as much as they deserved. Because thanks to this, anyone who wants to repeat something like this will know how it can end, and that there is no need to expect forgiveness. And she also struggles with the thought that for a repentant person, this is one of the greatest acts of mercy. He gave her the right to decide for herself, but warned her in advance that if this man returned to repeat his crime, he personally would not interfere and help her out of principle. So he advises her to think very carefully before forgiving anyone. And in the meantime, her personal assistant knocked on their door. She asked if she could come in and said that if the lady was busy, she could come later. The lady allowed her to come in. The assistant happily informed her that her brother had come to see her. She had just seen him with her own eyes. The girl couldn't even imagine that everything would turn out like this. She was sure that it would take at least an hour, and he was already here. For her, this was a great happiness. And the assistant also said that he was the most handsome man she had ever seen in her life. His sister was already so used to hearing this that she wasn't even surprised and didn't pay attention to it. Only her husband felt a little awkward because he usually doesn't like it when others are praised in front of him. And indeed, this guy is visible from afar. You can immediately tell who he is, and it is not surprising that people immediately want to compliment him. The assistant ran up to the guest and said that the mistress and gentleman were waiting for him in the reception room. He thanked her for the information because he just wanted to ask where he could find his sister. He himself is very embarrassed that they will see each other now after so much time. He holds on to the guy and doesn't show it. If only he knew how his sister was waiting for this moment. Her legs were literally shaking, and it's hard to even imagine what will happen to her when they hug. Here they have already seen each other. The guy apologized for this unexpected meeting. He wants to hope that they are glad to see him here. Kava didn't react to it at all, but his wife was practically jumping for joy, and he understood her perfectly. After all, if one of his relatives came to visit him, he would behave in exactly the same way, and in exactly the same way as she did. He would not be able to control himself, and he would not care how it looked from the outside. Meanwhile, the girl felt that it was better not to give these two people the opportunity to communicate, because they both have the same character. They never give in to anyone, and they only have their own opinion. They barely even hide their slight dislike for each other, and everyone around notices it, because as soon as one of them looks at someone, the look immediately changes. Brother says that they could have seen each other much earlier, but circumstances turned out so that unfortunately it didn't work out any other way. She suggests that he come up with a new tradition, for example, seeing each other at least once a month, no matter what the circumstances. Brother said that it was all very well, but now was the moment when he had to tell her something important. He had no chance to warn her about it in advance, but someone, namely Chang Young, came with him this time. For some time, they are all sitting quietly at the table, trying to get used to each other after so much time, because they haven't seen each other for a very long time. And at that moment, Chang Kyung says that he would like the girl to finally come back to their home, as if he doesn't understand that she already has a husband nearby from whom she will never leave. The situation is getting so heated that she doesn't know what to do anymore. And she's also very afraid that her husband won't be able to stand it and say something to them that will make it difficult for them to all get together and sit down for a long time. And also the thing is that brother Chan Kyung was originally her betrothed. So if this information comes out, we can assume that a huge scandal will begin. They sit at the table for no longer than half an hour, and the host of the house already hints that this is enough. Greetings, and it is time to show the guests to their rooms. She understood him perfectly, but she has no idea how to do it. And she also thinks that it is very disrespectful to the guests to hint that it is time for them to rest. Her husband started to help her. He says that they are probably very tired from the road and would not like to sit for so long when nothing prevents them from lying down for a couple of hours. Hua Shui thought that let everything be as his wife wanted. After all, they were her guests, and he said goodbye, went about his business, and asked his assistant to keep an eye on Zhang Yun from that moment on, and didn't take his eyes off him for a second, because it seemed to him that this man hadn't come just to see the Bakrai after so many years. Chung Kyung said that he was very tired, so he went to his room, and Bekri suggested her brother to go to the pond because it was very beautiful there now, and she wanted him to see it. The guy will only spend this time with pleasure. He is just very glad that he is not very tired, so he immediately agreed. And she promised him that it wouldn't take long. They would return to the room right after the walk, which would be very short. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. Her brother begins to ask why she does not show due attention to her good friend, Chang Gyun, and also asked if it is because of her husband, who is possibly pressuring her and forbidding her to communicate with anyone. She gets the idea that they seem to have a goal, to immediately know how she feels about this guy and what the likelihood is that they can be together. Although, given the fact whose house they are discussing this in now, it even sounds very strange. She doesn't even know how to answer them correctly because surely, before coming here, they discussed it and thought about how to act, and also so that it would be as careful as possible. Since they brought it up themselves, Bekri made it clear that since she was married, she was not going to discuss the topic in principle, and if someone came here just to ask her this question, then they could just up and leave right now. She thought that they just wanted to see her, but they have a whole plan and they are not embarrassed that she is actually in a relationship. It's also strange to her why it's her brother who's talking to her about this, and not the guy himself who's most interested in this. He's like hiding behind his back, like a little child. Even if the girl wouldn't mind being with him, such behavior would immediately push her away. In the meantime, she told them that if their goal was to make her life even more difficult, then they could continue in the same spirit. But if not, then she would like to ask them not to even think about it. She had no plans to betray her husband, and if she needed to, she would have done it a long time ago. It's strange that they don't understand this. And then the brother realized that he had gone a bit too far. He shouldn't have told her about it so suddenly. And anyway, he himself wasn't thrilled that he had to talk instead of someone else, and it wasn't even his business. He says that if she doesn't want to talk about it, then he won't say a single word about it again, because it's a little more important to him to maintain a relationship with her than to help someone, whoever it may be. And then the situation changed dramatically. He just said that he would no longer interfere in her personal life. Suddenly, he needed to go into the room to leave them alone. Thus, he gave his friend a chance to do what he should. Thus, he put his sister in a very awkward situation. She tried to stop him, but it didn't work, and she ended up feeling terribly uncomfortable. It was as if these two had conspired. She already regretted that she had not listened to her husband initially, but if she had done as he suggested, everything would have been much better. It's not clear to her how, after all she said, when she said that it's not interesting, they can continue to put pressure on her and try to get her closer to this guy. It's as if he himself doesn't see that she hasn't needed this for a long time, and he still looks at her with such eyes as if he hadn't heard anything like that. Apparently, it was not for nothing that Kfei ordered to follow this man. It was as if he immediately felt that something was fishy here. Since he asked about it, it means that right now someone is most likely watching them, even if no one is visible around. Jung Kyung started by saying that he was supposedly very happy that she was okay. Although if he came with the hope that they could be together, how can he say such a thing, knowing that she has a husband? This means that he is being hypocritical and trying to appear to be someone he is not in reality. The main thing is that the girl sees and understands this. And judging by the fact that she tells him that everything is fine with her, only thanks to her husband, she understands this and specifically emphasizes this. Sihurnam. The guy says that he somehow doesn't believe that that villain could become an ordinary person and even go over to the side of good. And she began to tell him that she and her husband even went to church, and he made a vow that he would never do anything that could harm someone again. And if he did, it would only be for the sake of justice, protecting someone or himself. Chun Kyung reacted with a smirk. He himself did not believe it, and even asked her how she could be so naive, thinking that people can change for the better. Immediately after these words, she felt somehow uneasy. She felt very uncomfortable with him, because at the very least, it was clear that there was no point in explaining anything to him. He had been against Hui all his life, and would continue to be, no matter what he was. It's very unfair that she tries to talk to him as softly as possible, and he allows himself to make such statements as if he forgot whose house this is and who can throw him out of here. At that moment, the guy suddenly realized that he had said too much, because if the girl had been touchy, she would have already run to her husband and told him what he thought of him, and most importantly, with what intention he came here. She tried to put herself in his shoes, but she still can't understand where he gets so much confidence that she can somehow be with him. And how dare he suggest this on the territory of her husband, who, if he finds out about this, it's hard to imagine what he will do to him for this. Instead of apologizing for butting in where it wasn't his business, the guy started asking her how her relationship was going, how she felt about her husband, and whether she could imagine a future life with him. She, of course, expected such a question from him, but she didn't think that he was such an impudent person that he would ask about such a thing, because it was already too much. It seems that in a little while, she herself will throw him out as far as possible. And in the meantime, the gentleman invited his assistant to his place, and he told him all the details of his wife's conversation with the guest, which he overheard a couple of hours ago. The guy can't help but think that the assistant will take his request so literally, and that's for the best. I wonder what he will do with this now. The main thing is that the assistant tells him everything correctly, and the gentleman does not think that his wife agreed to something. So no. Meanwhile, Bakri has unexpected things to do. She needs to figure out how to get jobs and housing for those who were recently released. Some want to stay away from the place where they were. Some want to work on the farm. Everyone has different desires, so the guy suggests first settling them somewhere, and only then think about what they will do. Bakri really wants all these people to get a life that will completely satisfy them, so that everyone can do their own thing. Although even the fact that they saved is already enough, but still, she wants to do something for them. They started discussing different locations, but considering the number of people being freed, at least one day needs to be allocated for each person, so the whole thing will take at least several months. They need to somehow distribute their forces to do everything faster. She is also lucky that she is not alone, and there are those who will be happy to help her. The girl notices that he keeps looking at her, but doesn't say anything, as if he's trying to see something. He explained that he noticed that her face was too pale and offered to check her pulse, just in case. The girl immediately told him that she felt fine, but he still wants to make sure of it, only after the recent one. Any of his requests seemed strange to her. It even seemed to him that she was hiding her body and not giving him her hand because she was trying to hide some kind of beatings that her husband left her with. She explains to him that she always looks like this, And in the end, she still gave him her hand so that he would just calm down. He didn't see anything on her hand that he expected to see. Her pulse was absolutely normal. Everything was very simple. She always had such light skin, so there was nothing special about it. Just at that moment, Chang-gyung came to them. He apparently felt at home, so he didn't even consider it necessary to knock. The guy didn't even apologize for disturbing them and said why he came, as if he had been there all this time and just went to drink some water. He asked how they were doing, how he could help, and the girl didn't even know how to react to him after everything he said. She even thought that perhaps he wanted to apologize and thank her for not telling her husband anything, although a couple more such conversations, and she would definitely do it. Without further ado, she said that if they could help, she would be happy to work with them, but if not, she asked them not to distract her. And in the meantime, some time passed. They worked very well, but some things still remained. The girl wakes up from the first second. As soon as she opened her eyes, she thinks about the fact that they planned to resettle 100 people, but only managed half. She feels like if they didn't have any guests, she would have gotten through this much faster. And besides the fact that they distract her, all these conversations don't give her any peace. Now she thought that she couldn't stop thinking about the way that guy looked at her. It was obvious that he tried not to show it, but she noticed everything, even more than she should have. And what worries her most is that in today's dream, she saw as if she was together with him, and that her husband does not exist in this world. She is happy with this guy and cannot imagine her life without him. Now she feels terribly awkward remembering how she felt his touch, how she loved him with pure feelings. While in the real world, she has a husband who does a lot for her and seems to love her. In the morning, she felt like a traitor because after such a dream, it couldn't be any other way. Although no one can control themselves in a dream, for some reason it seems to her that she is to blame. Although after everything that happens, it is not surprising that she dreams like this. It's a pity that the girl doesn't understand this and thinks as if she really cheated on the person who trusts her. At that moment, these two guys walk into the room. They look at each other like they're enemies, and it's like the dream was reality. It turns out that's exactly how it was. The thing is that the guy put something in her food, made her start to feel something for him, and then she thought it was a dream. This whole dream, it was real. It happened at night, and in the morning, her husband found out about it. His assistant told him about it, whom he ordered to watch him. While she is trying to understand what is happening and does not understand what is happening, Hua is ready to destroy everything in his path to take revenge. When the girl realized that they couldn't just start fighting and running around the room, she didn't believe that it was possible, but she saw with her own eyes that it was so. At the same time, she begins to hate herself because it turns out that she really did cheat on her husband, and everything he does now, he has every right to do. She really wants to apologize to him, but there is no point in it anymore. What's done is done, and even if he forgives her, it will only be if the guy personally admits that she did it without controlling herself. And most likely, he is unlikely to admit that he did this to her. So now all that remains is to hope for a miracle, both for her and for him. The gentleman, of course, promised that he would not beat anyone. But in this situation, justice is on his side, and he has the right to do whatever he wants. Every time he looks at her with crazy eyes, she wants to hit herself so hard for how she could lose her mind and do such a thing. As usual, the guy has the courage to ask her for help, as if he thinks that now the bakery will easily stand up and stop everything. When he realized that he wouldn't be able to resist for long, while he had the opportunity, he began to say everything he thought. Namely, that if he forgives his wife, then after a while she will betray him again, just as she did that night, for which he immediately paid. Just when she was thinking about what she would tell her husband, he came up to her and said that he could spare everyone, but only if she did something. It is clear that he will never be able to forgive her, but in order to save someone's life, she agrees to this, so she asked what he needs. He wants her to spend the night with him, and also not to dare to refuse anything and to do everything he tells her to do. But he said it with such a look as if it was not about feelings, as if he wanted to use her as a thing to calm down. And it is much more important for her to know what will happen with this relationship, and what is the chance that she will be able to do something after which he will forgive her. For the sake of him leaving everyone alive, she agrees to his proposal, and then will try to solve problems as they arise. They will have to talk anyway, but first she has to fulfill his wish. Otherwise, he is unlikely to want to talk to her. Meanwhile, he asked her when she was ready to get down to business, to which the girl replied that she was ready right now, but she asked to take everyone else out of the room. Now they are alone. She understands that she shouldn't expect tenderness from him. He already grabs her by the shoulder and orders her to immediately lie down on the bed. She imagined in your head the most terrible picture that her imagination could come up with. She even winced in fear, but this didn't bother him. The guy was boldly and happily ready to do with her everything he had long dreamed of. She is so disgusted by what is happening now that Bekri closed her eyes and tries not to look at him, because she will not see anything good in his eyes. Suddenly, he ordered her to immediately open her eyes so that he could see them, and there would be no way to resist. She just looked at him, saw that he had nothing on anymore. Her face turned red, not only from fear, but also from the feeling that he didn't feel sorry for her and that she deserved it. She had seen him look at someone else like that, but never at himself and in such a situation. She is very upset that he does not perceive her as his beloved wife. Now she is just a body for him, with which she can atone for her guilt. I wonder what will happen next. He will probably tell her something, although everything is already clear here. I can only hope that he at least does not take her life, because no one else has ever treated him as cruelly as she did. He trusted her, loved her, forgave her for a lot, and she thanked him like this and should answer for it. And she herself completely agrees with this, and of course is grateful that she is still alive, given his character and how he usually acts with others in such situations. At some point she even managed to relax, but he rarely looked at her and said that he heard very few sounds and he did not see that she was enjoying herself. Bakri apologized and stopped being silent, but she didn't understand what exactly he meant by this. Usually it was enough for him that she just looked at him, but apparently he was not telling her something. The girl more and more begins to remember that guy because of whom all this is happening. It is still unclear to her how he dared to interfere in someone else's life, especially after she made it clear to him that nothing could happen between them. She will definitely find out how he did it so that a similar situation does not happen again. Meanwhile, he asks her to scream louder, while looking at her and telling her not to stop. His goal is to do something to her that will make her beg him to stop and unable to breathe because her body can't handle the strain. And he also said that at the end he would have a little surprise for her and promised that she would like it. She has no idea what it could be. She decided to think about it later because right now she has no time for it. After some time, she lost consciousness and suddenly she opens her eyes and the first thought that worries her is that it was. She doesn't feel like this happened to her, which means it was all a dream, starting with the fact that she cheated on her husband and ending with what he did to her for it. In any case, she still needs to make sure of it. As soon as she woke up, she immediately wanted to take a bath, because after that, you definitely need to relax, otherwise you can go crazy. She really enjoys being in a warm bath. It seems to heal her, and here she thinks much less about bad things. To distract herself a little, Bikri immediately got down to work, and every time she hears a sound, she thinks that her husband is coming to ask her how she has the conscience to look people in the eye. Or maybe this really was all a dream, which was a consequence of all her experiences and stress lately. It's already evening, but even after a whole day of good deeds, she still feels very bad. Something inside her is troubling her because she can't wait to figure out whether all this was real or not. And the worst thing is that she can't figure it out herself. It's a shame that you can't just go to your husband and ask him what happened last night, because he'll think that something is wrong with her. After everything that happened recently, she couldn't stand it and came to the temple to apologize, if there was anything to apologize for, and to pray for everything to be okay. She turned to the Queen Mother of the West, asking for forgiveness for having such thoughts, in case it was all just a dream. She herself feels uncomfortable that she can admit the thought that she could have cheated on her husband, and doubts whether it was real or not. Meanwhile, Bekri returns home and sees some strangers sitting quietly in the yard and drinking tea. She really wanted to ask who they were, but it would probably be wrong, so she pretended she knew they were coming. I wonder what's going on here. And all the girls around looked so good that she started to feel uncomfortable. If she knew that someone was coming to visit them, she would have put on makeup too, tidied herself up, and wouldn't have felt so terrible. Her morale is so exhausted that she even forgot to say hello to them and can't find the words to ask how they are doing. She wants only one thing: for no one to pay attention to her, for them all to rest peacefully and go home as unexpectedly as they arrived. Meanwhile, she managed to get away from them for a long time. The girl went into the first room she came across. I decided to stay here for a while and accidentally noticed some unusual book on the table, so I picked it up and started looking at it. What interested her most was that there were no drawings or inscriptions on the book. Its cover was completely blank. The thought flashed through her mind that maybe she shouldn't meddle where she shouldn't, because this wasn't her book. But still, interest turned out to be higher than her sense of conscience. So she took it in her hands and most likely will open it and read it. Suddenly, on the backside, she noticed the title, A Guide to Growing Plants Together, and she immediately became upset because she thought it would be something interesting. The only strange thing is that there are too many pages for this topic, and the girl also doubts that she read the title correctly because she has problems with it. And then her husband appears in the room. She felt doubly ashamed in front of him. She was confused and asked what he was doing here. Then she realized that it could be his book. She thought what would be better to do and couldn't think of anything better than to just throw it somewhere to the side, although he had already seen it in her hands, so she did not do better. He somehow managed to catch the book, and he smiled as if it was her personal diary, and now he was going to find out all her secrets. To begin with, she asked what she was doing in this room and why she was throwing this book away, because it was not her thing. She felt terribly ashamed of this, and Becky again couldn't think of anything better to say than that she just wanted to put the book on the shelf. If she didn't quite understand what he was talking about, he explained to her that it was a secret book that was forbidden even to be touched by those who did not own it. Her cheeks immediately turned red. She realized what a mistake she had made, but she could have just not touched her and there would have been no problems. Then he asked her how she was doing with her martial arts, or rather, whether she had stopped hiding them, because he no longer liked watching her pretend to be weak. Judging by the fact that he's asking about it, he's not interested in anything else anymore, which means that the whole situation was a dream after all, and that's very encouraging. She said that she would try not to do that again, especially since it was so important to him that he reminded her of it almost every time he saw her. And also, to make him feel better, she said that she hadn't looked inside the book and had no idea what was written there. She even has a guess that maybe what's inside isn't what's written on the cover, because if this book is so secret, it's unlikely that something like that would happen about the plants. At least she doubts it very much, especially since he knows that she is not interested in this topic. But he took it and shouted at her as if it was his personal diary with all his secrets. The girl began to notice that she could no longer hear him. She was on her own wavelength, probably because she was very nervous. The main thing is that she doesn't faint, because that usually happens to her in just such situations. Moreover, living with such a person in the same house is very difficult, especially after what she has been dreaming about lately. It's amazing how the girl still remains calm and didn't go crazy on the first day. Meanwhile, very unexpectedly, he suggests giving this book to someone to burn, and here his wife is completely confused. After all, if a book is such a special feature, then it should not be destroyed under any circumstances. And it is also possible that this is some kind of test, although it is unclear what the point is. Becky couldn't hold back anymore. She asked him what's going on here, because it looks like he's just joking with her, and there's nothing special in this book. Meanwhile, again, for some unknown reason, the gentleman asked his assistant to bring the same book to him personally, as if he couldn't take it himself. Maybe it's some other part of it, although they look absolutely identical, and it looks like it's the same book. Even the assistant, after reading the title, doesn't quite understand how the gentleman could be interested in something related to growing plants. And this means that perhaps the name is somehow different from the content, because there is no other explanation yet. It turns out that there is not just one such book in this house. There are two of them. One is real, and the other is a copy, which really contains a lot of information about plants. This is done so that everyone will get acquainted with this book, find out that there is nothing special in it, and even if somehow the real secret book ends up in someone's hands, no one will be interested in reading it. Meanwhile, he returned to his wife, asked her if she should read books or not. It seems this is another question, the meaning of which she will never understand. The girl will never believe that he is really interested in knowing how she feels about books and what exactly she has read in her entire life, or at least recently. Every time he tells her something, she tries to find a hidden meaning in it, but she never succeeds. It is unclear to her what all these questions are about. Is it really that he simply does not want to remain silent, or is he afraid? So he talks about anything. The only thing that calms her down is that he doesn't hate her, and the biggest fear she had is gone. For this reason, so as not to be afraid of anything, she's not against talking to him in this room, if only he was happy. Suddenly, for some reason, he takes out a second copy of the book from his clothes, but the girl doesn't yet understand why he's doing this and what it is. He asks her if she has seen or maybe read anything before, to which she replies that it is the first time she holds it in her hands. And no idea why he is interested in this because, at the very least, she is not interested in the topic of plants. He keeps looking at her with this look as if he knows some truth and is waiting for her to admit it. And she really doesn't understand what's going on here because she doesn't hide anything from him. Well, almost. Meanwhile, he asked her if he could make one request that concerned her conscience. He would like to ask her to never open this book again, even if it is lying on the floor. The lady still doesn't understand why they're even talking about this, because she's already told him more than once that she doesn't need it. And since he insisted on it so much, she promised that she would not even touch this book with her fingers, even if she was forced to. He said that he was very glad to hear this from her and hoped for her honesty, if of course she had it. Suddenly, he says that it's a joke and that if she loves him, she should read the first page. The girl, without any thought, opens this book and does not even guess that this could be the first test. She opens the book with trembling hands, understands that there must be some kind of catch here, and doesn't even look at his reaction. And she's also interested in why he asked to open the first page. Because if it's a test, then it shouldn't matter to him where she opens it. And then Bakri remembers that she just told him that she wouldn't do it even if she was asked to.